Yeah, another one of the ones we done was, what we're going to do was for a research ship that went to Antarctica. That was what it was based for. There's another stuff, a bunch of stuff we used to do, real small stuff, real tall, skinny intercoolers and that. And that was for what used to be called Ant Division. And I said, what the hell is Ant Division? And they said it's Antarctic Division. So I think they were going in like snowmobiles or something. And then I started thinking, do snowmobiles really need radiators? I mean, do they get that damn hot? You know, I was sort of thinking like, wouldn't air cooling just have been better? But anyway, there's another one too, a big project over here that they were hoping to get their nose into, that he was reading in the paper very intently one day. And how it works is we've got natural gas, like you wouldn't believe. They claim we're the world's #1 exporter of natural gas. Now, I think that means seaborne, as in ship exporter, because I really think that Russia would be the #1 exporter. And you may think that some of these other places like Nigeria and that would export it. Surprisingly enough, I have heard, I've read that back in the day, in the thousands, they were just burning it off, just flaring it off. But it's our close proximity to China that has a lot to do with it. But basically, there's one little area that they call the Saudi Arabia of gas, and this is just like one little gulf, one little, patch sort of thing. We've got gas like you wouldn't believe it. We've even got some out here, down here in the south, and that powers a small power station and everybody in the capital city plus the city in where I used to work. Now, what they were going to do was they used to suck it out and then they'd take it to shore and they'd have a refinery on shore, and then they'd have to pump it from the refinery into the ships going to China. And they got like big balls on the back, which are like the gas tanks basically. And they take it over liquefied. But what they worked out they could do is they could make a refinery on a ship. And the idea was that you pull the ship up beside the bloomin' the gas rig, the offshore gas rig out in the sea, and then you put some sort of pipes or whatever from the gas rig to the refinery on the ship, and then from the refinery on the ship to the ship going to China, and you just float it up beside it, plug all the lines in, fill her up, and it takes off again, and then the next one comes. And they're hoping to get in on that. So, these people aren't just sort of playing around. They're full on into it. Now, there's a number of different radiators that I, will cover. I'll show in a better quality video, but I'll just talk about them now. You've got a couple of different kinds. Now, you've got your crap car ones, which basically you have your tubes, and then you have like a zigzag of fins, and you just sort of lay down this zigzag, this strip of fins, and then several more tubes, and another strip of fins, and it's just like a big zigzag, and you just throw that down the tubes, and that's how you make it, and it's very quick and easy to make it, and there's a low chance of mistakes. I don't think it actually transfers these as well, because the way we used to do something like, oh gosh, it was like more than 98% of them were some of the ones I've seen, like on the old tractor out here, and that is where you actually have fins that are flat with little louvers and all that cut into them, but they literally come out like a flat sheet, and then you have a whole stack of them, and all of them have got these holes in them, and then the tubes actually slide through the middle of these holes, and they've got these things which are basically like a frame, and it's got like these bits of aluminium with all these little dimples, and you slide each of these fins into each dimple, and then while it's holding the fins either side by being slotted into it, then you get your tubes and like this sword looking thing, and you put the tube under the sword, and then you push the sword through all these fins, and that was about 98% of what we made was that kind of one. And there's quite a chance for error, especially if the fins aren't all in line. You'll hit it and you'll tear the fin or whatever. You know, there's people that used to try and get a bit rough with them, and then they'd split the tube. And if there was any more than 3% of tubes had a crack, they'd throw it out. They'd just reject. It'd go to scrap metal. But yeah, these things are between $1,000 and $1,500 each just to make the core. So you didn't want to stuff them up. There was a lot of copper is worth an astronomical amount, and that's the other thing. You'll notice car radiators are aluminium. Not as good heat transfer properties, but it's, as of about 9 months ago or so, it was the lowest price it had been in 10 years. It was basically the same price it was 10 years ago, regardless of inflation. So aluminium's not worth a cracker. But copper is the highest it's ever been in history, as of this meeting that we had 9 months ago. So yeah, you know, you don't want to stuff up. Now, intercoolers, essentially, the way we used to make them, were pretty much the same as the radiators, except when your tube comes up, it's like nice and skinny looking. But when you get up to the top, with a water one, you flare it out. And they've got this thing that looks like, sort of like the end of a bullet or the end of a pen. And it sort of pokes in, and they call it the resizer, and it spreads it out. And so that it goes from like a circle, and then it goes down into a tube shape. And they sit this in this thing, and these big things come down, you know, and they poke a whole bunch all at once, sort of thing, to spread them out and open them up into a circle. You do that with the radiators. With the intercoolers, you don't worry about it. You just leave them the standard shape because the air is more viscous. It can easily flow through. The other thing with intercoolers is they're apparently able to handle a bit of leakage. But the high quality ones, we treated them the same as the radiators. No leakage, no crap. And that was that. There were a few of the major truck brands that we used to deal with, and they had a different system, which is very smartly set up. And I spent like months and months, like nearly 6 months on this, and during night shift. And it was basically Ultra Seal is what it's called. And I think it's Trans Pro, and one of them is actually already, you know, holds the patent for it. But we used to use it under license. And how it basically is you've got these great big, it's literally just a bit of sheet metal folded into a tube that is literally like inches wide. It's like 2.5 inches wide or more. And then it's like, about, I don't know, 3/8 or something. No, actually it'd be less. It'd be probably 1/4 inch or something wide. And yeah, it'd be about 1/4 inch wide by about 3 inches or something like that. And they had rubber grommets on the actual header plate. Now your header plate is your flat bit before it goes into your tanks or your manifolds. And that flat bit is the one with all the holes in it to take all the tubes. That's your header plate. Well, they didn't have it sort of stuck on, welded on. They actually had these rubber seals, and they'd actually come in a big strip, and you'd literally just get a strip of them and you just lay it in, and then you sit them in. And all they'd have to do is just basically weld the header plate to the manifold. With some of those, there was a slight tolerance for leakage, and sometimes it would just leak out the rubber, but there's a lot lower chance of destroying them when they're in the field because they don't get cracks from vibration because they're just jostling around in the rubber grommets. And they're a brilliant idea. They're unbelievably well thought out. Wouldn't work for water though. It'd be pissing everywhere. You'd be losing quite a few litres. But as an intercooler, it works fine. So that was a couple of the major truck brands we done for that. But yeah, there's radiators and then there's radiators. Aside from the Ultra Seal, which were clamped together and then had bolts with brackets put in place to hold them solid, everything else was bolted. So basically everything was bolted, because the Ultra Seal had either manifold with brackets on them and bolts going through the brackets. All this stuff you see in cars where they've got a plastic tank and then they sort of get a crimp and they sort of like they're doing a bloody tin of beans or something, none of that crap existed there. And in my world, that is just crap. You want, proper bloody bolts, and everything they done had bolts. And yeah, it was some of the stuff that come out of there, like you'd be shocked at how it was, at how it was so, strange looking, different. I saw some weird looking things. I saw this one that had a tank on it that was basically a triangle. I mean, you look at some of these things and you just think, God, blimey. It's just strange. But, they're for really strange machines. They even done grape pickers, apparently. And on top of that, we done the nation's tanks, and we got very close to, if not exactly, double the cooling capacity of the radiator that was originally in the tanks with, the way the tanks were originally built, because apparently the tanks are European. But, that gives you an idea of the stuff they could achieve. But, they're doing some strange stuff for some very picky customers. And over in Japan, in Hitachi, and I wouldn't be surprised Tominaga as well, they used to literally go and check every single bolt on the whole thing for washers. That was one bloke's job, just sitting there looking, checking every bolt's got a washer on it. That's the sort of fussiness of the customers. So if you're in the oil and gas industry, don't hold back if you've got some really high-tech sort of stuff, especially if you've got quite a number of rigs you may be interested in putting stuff on, or you've got stuff which has got to handle really serious heat, like stuff in Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, because this stuff that we built, a lot of that was designed to run at 60 degrees Celsius. I mean, the surrounding air temperature in some of the mines we have is 57, 58 degrees Celsius, and so they've got to develop these things to run at 60 degrees Celsius to handle this sort of temperature, because we do get these temperatures. These are Iraq-style temperatures that we get out in the desert mining regions, and henceforth we've got to build to suit, and that's what Air Radiators done. They had a Mitsubishi gas turbine generator, and that was designed to run at 60 degrees Celsius. Also, as far as we know, the country's largest, if not the world's largest, articulated loader, and I've seen a photo of this thing. Holy cow, the size of this thing just boggles your mind. It's hard to even explain the size of it. The thing had 3 fire extinguishers on the side, which were large fire extinguishers. You barely even see them, and we were going to redo the cooling package in that machine. But if you got something real strange, go ring them up down at Air Radiators. I don't have their phone number handy, but you can find it, airradiators, all one word, .com.au, or airrads, airrads.com.au, and tell them Link Knight sent you. Yeah, they probably still won't give you a discount even if you say that.